Dr. Zephyr Arcana had seen enough bizarre crap in his career to fill 1,000 trashy tabloids, but this one took the cake, ate it, and spat out the crumbs in your face with a smug grin. Xylox was supposed to be a barren rock, another pointless stop in the galaxy tour of nothing to see here, folks. Instead, it was more like a cosmic prank orchestrated by a god with a particularly twisted sense of humor. "This is unbelievable," muttered Zephyr, his breath fogging up the visor of his helmet. He tapped a button on his wrist to bring up a holographic display. The alien zoo sprawled before them like some demented theme park, complete with creatures that should have been locked away in the dusty pages of human folklore or relegated to poorly CGI-ed movies. "Either I'm dreaming or someone spiked the coffee on the shuttle. If you're dreaming, then I'm suffering a collective hallucination," piped up Kellen, his ever-enthusiastic assistant. "And I'd like to ask for a refund on my sanity, please." Zephyr smirked. "You never had much sanity to begin with, Kellen." "That's why I hired you." The rest of the team was spread out, poking and prodding at the bizarre menagerie with a mix of awe and trepidation. A few feet away, Dr. Janie Shrike was busy scanning the perimeter with a device that looked suspiciously like a hairdryer from the year 3000. "Finding anything useful, Janie?" Zephyr called out. She glanced over, her expression hidden behind the reflective surface of her helmet. "You mean besides the existential dread and the overwhelming scent of bullcrap?" "Not much," Zephyr chuckled. "Thought as much." The zoo itself was a sprawling complex, all sleek lines and alien elegance, like a cross between a luxury spa and a maximum security prison for mythical beasts. Lush greenery and bizarre floral arrangements filled the space between the transparent cages, each housing a creature straight out of a bedtime story gone horribly wrong. "Is that a dragon?" Kellen asked, pointing at a massive reptilian figure coiled behind a force field. "Looks like it," Zephyr replied dryly. "You'd think they'd feed it a night or two to keep it happy." "I'm more of a maiden, but I could be persuaded," Kellen quipped, earning him a snort of amusement from Zephyr. "Don't let it get your scent. Might develop a taste for sci-fi nerds." They moved further into the zoo, passing a unicorn grazing peacefully on what appeared to be a patch of artificial grass. Its horn shimmered with an unsettling luminescence, a beacon of whimsical improbability in an otherwise grim setting. "Who the hell built this place?" Zephyr wondered aloud. "And why?" "Maybe they got bored of reality," Janie suggested, joining them. "Decided to spruce it up with some fantasy. Or maybe it's a messed-up cultural exchange program," Kellen added. "Bring your myths, get an alien souvenir." Zephyr considered this as they wandered deeper into the zoo. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional roar or screech from one of the inhabitants. It was like a carnival funhouse designed by someone who'd spent one too many nights reading Lovecraft while under the influence of questionable substances. "Think about it," Zephyr said, half to himself. "Mythical beasts from Earth. But there's no record of any contact with aliens who'd be interested in our old tales. Maybe they wanted to collect us like baseball cards," Kellen suggested. "And now they're just showing off their complete set," Janie added. They paused in front of a massive tank filled with water, where a creature that looked suspiciously like a kraken floated lazily, its tentacles drifting like anemones in a deep-sea current. "Well, if nothing else, at least we've got proof that humans really are the galaxy's best storytellers," Zephyr said, his voice laced with sardonic pride. "Or the galaxy's best teeters," Kellen countered. Zephyr nodded. "There's always that." Eventually, they reached the control center, a room filled with consoles and displays that glowed with an eerie green light. "Now this looks promising," Zephyr said, tapping at a console. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding." Janie and Kellen crowded around him as a series of alien symbols flashed across the screen, accompanied by a low hum that seemed to vibrate through the floor. "Hope you brushed up on your alien hieroglyphics," Kellen said. "Oh sure," Zephyr replied. "I did that right after I decided to learn Klingon in my spare time." Despite the sarcasm, Zepha's fingers danced over the controls with practiced ease, pulling up a series of holographic records. Images of Earth, its people, and its myths flickered in the air before them, each labeled with alien text. "Well, I'll be damned," Janie murmured. "They've been watching us." Zepha frowned as he scrolled through the data. "More like cataloging us, like we're the ones in the zoo." "Let's hope they don't decide to start feeding us to the exhibits," Kellen said, his voice only half joking. A sudden noise drew their attention back to the displays. A new set of images appeared, this time showing scenes that none of them recognized. "What's that?" Janie asked, pointing. "Looks like future Earth," Zephyr replied, his voice tinged with disbelief. Kellen leaned in closer, squinting at the holograms. "Oh great, now they're predicting our doom too, as if our politicians weren't doing a good enough job of that already." Zephyr chuckled, but his mind was racing. The implications were staggering. Were these aliens some kind of cosmic voyeurs, taking notes on humanity's past, present, and future? And if so, what did they plan to do with that knowledge? "We need to figure out what this place is really for," he said decisively, "before they decide to add us to their collection." Janie nodded. "Agreed. But first we might want to consider how we're going to explain all this to the brass back home." "Let's just say we found a zoo," Kellen suggested with a grin. "Then watch their heads explode when we show them the footage." Zepha laughed. "Now that's something I'd pay to see." As they turned to leave, a sudden movement caught Zepha's eye. One of the cages, previously empty, now contained a figure. It was human, or at least it looked human. Guys," Zepha pointed, his voice tinged with unease. Kellen and Janie followed his gaze, their expressions shifting from curiosity to alarm. "That wasn't there before," Janie said slowly. "Nope, definitely not," Kellen agreed, taking a cautious step back. The figure remained still, its features obscured by shadows. But there was a sense of familiarity in its stance, an echo of humanity reflected in the alien mirrors of the zoo. Zepha felt a chill run down his spine. "Looks like we've got a new exhibit, or a new friend," Kellen added nervously. Janie's hand drifted to the weapon at her side. "Let's hope it's the friendly type." Zepha nodded, his mind racing through the possibilities. Was this some kind of warning, a lure? Or perhaps a message from those who watch from the stars? "Guess we're about to find out," he said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that gnawed at him. They turned away from the creature, the weight of its gaze pressing down on them like the gravity of 1,000 unanswered questions. As they made their way back through the zoo, the shadows seemed to close in, the whispers of myth and mystery echoing in the silence. Whatever secrets this place held, one thing was clear. Xylox was more than just another barren rock. It was a chapter of humanity's story that was still being written, and Zepha had a feeling it was going to be a hell of a ride. Kellen was the first to break the tense silence as they left the zoo's control center. "So, new exhibit or not, what's the game plan?" "I'm all for winging it, but I'd like to keep all my limbs intact." "Don't worry," Zephyr replied, his voice laced with dry humor as he adjusted his helmet. "You're not on the menu just yet. Let's dig a little deeper before we run screaming back to the shuttle." "Always with the optimism," Janie quipped, scanning the path ahead with her trusty hairdryer-turned-scanner. The device emitted a soft beep, picking up energy patterns that made her eyebrows lift in mild concern. "We've got some interesting readings up ahead. Could be useful. Could also be the universe's way of saying run." "Well, luck favors the bold," Kellen chimed in with a wry grin, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. "Or those too stupid to know when to turn back." Zepha chuckled, feeling a strange mix of dread and excitement bubbling beneath his calm exterior. "In that case, we should be just fine." They followed Janie's lead, the strange scenery of the zoo shifting into what looked like a tunnel. The walls glowed with a faint, sickly green, casting ghoulish shadows that danced in mocking patterns. "Perfect setting for a horror flick," Zepha mused, hoping they wouldn't end up as the hapless victims. Their journey concluded in a cavernous chamber, where they were greeted by a sight both fascinating and unsettling. In the center of the room stood an obelisk, its surface a kaleidoscope of shifting symbols. The air hummed with barely contained energy, like the charged silence before a lightning storm. "Welcome, Earthlings," a voice boomed, seemingly coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. It had the resonant quality of an old-school radio announcer with just a hint of menace. Zephyr exchanged glances with Janie and Kellen. "Great, we've been upgraded from zoo visitors to intergalactic pen pals," he muttered. "Who the hell are you?" "I am Vordek," the voice continued, its tone dripping with condescension. "Caretaker of this facility and curator of your worlds. Fascinating creations. So you're the one responsible for bringing our bedtime stories to life," Janie said, her eyes narrowed. "I'm struggling to decide whether that's genius or insanity." "Why not both?" Kellen added with a shrug, unable to let go of his perpetual sarcasm even in the face of a cosmic librarian. "Your myths and legends have intrigued the Zorathians for centuries," Vordek explained, its tone shifting to something resembling pride. "We have watched, learned, and preserved what you call fiction, for its potential is extraordinary." "What kind of potential are we talking about?" Zephyr asked, his voice sharp. "And why does it feel like we're about to be hit with a sales pitch?" "The creatures from your tales possess abilities that, when harnessed, could revolutionize energy production, transportation, and even warfare," Vordek said, the words laced with ominous implication. "Imagine dragons powering starships, krakens controlling the vast oceans of alien worlds." Zephyr's lips twisted into a cynical smile. "And let me guess, you Zorathians plan to patent this mythical tech and sell it back to us for a hefty profit." "Profit is a human concept," Vordek replied, sounding almost offended. "We seek to understand and utilize the energies of the cosmos." "Sounds like you're playing God with a few extra tentacles," Janie shot back. "There are some things better left in the realm of fantasy." "Such as?" Vordek countered smoothly. "Your species has always blurred the line between reality and fiction. We simply aim to take it a step further." Kellen leaned towards Zephyr. "Is it just me, or does this AI have a serious superiority complex?" "Probably got it from the Zorathians," Zephyr replied, keeping his voice low. "But it sounds like we might be more relevant to their plans than we thought." "Indeed," Vordek interjected, as if reading their minds. "Your presence here is fortunate. You could assist us in refining the process, a partnership if you will." Zephyr raised an eyebrow. "We're not exactly the team-up with aliens to create dragon-powered starships kind of people. You misunderstand. This facility is in need of maintenance. And you with your unique perspectives could be invaluable," Janie snorted. "Maintenance? You want us to play janitor in your cosmic zoo? Doesn't sound like the kind of partnership we're interested in." "Consider it an opportunity," Vordek persisted. "To witness the future of your world, to be part of a grand experiment." Zephyr's mind raced. The Zorathians' motives were murky at best, but if they truly intended to harness mythical creatures for power, the implications were staggering and dangerous. "We'll need some time to think this over." "Of course," Vordek replied, its voice smooth and accommodating. "Take all the time you need, but remember, time is a fleeting construct." "Yeah, and we're fresh out of it," Zephyr muttered under his breath as they turned to leave. Back at the entrance of the zoo, Kellen was the first to break the silence. "So, what now? We just walk away and pretend we didn't hear about their plan to turn dragons into energy drinks?" Zephyr frowned, deep in thought. "We need to report this to Earth. If these Zorathians are serious about using our myths, it could throw the balance of power off kilter." "Assuming they let us leave," Janie said, her gaze flicking back towards the zoo, where the shadows seemed to pulse with life. "True," Zephyr admitted, rubbing his chin. "But if Vordek was serious about his maintenance offer, they need us more than we need them." Kellen glanced around the alien landscape, the absurdity of their situation not lost on him. "So we're not just cosmic zoo visitors, but potential cosmic custodians." "Lovely." Zephyr let out a dry laugh. "Look on the bright side. It beats being another exhibit. And if we play our cards right, we might just keep ourselves off the menu." Janie nodded, her expression one of determination. Then let's get back to the shuttle and send a message to the brass. This is one story they're not gonna believe." As they retraced their steps, the oppressive atmosphere of the zoo seemed to close in, the weight of what they'd discovered pressing down on them with every step. But beneath the tension, a thread of defiance wove through their thoughts. They might be pawns in a cosmic game, but they were human, irreverent, stubborn, and not inclined to take orders from an AI with delusions of grandeur. Back at the shuttle, Zephyr initiated the communication system, sending a brief but urgent message to their superiors. The response took only a few moments, crackling through the speakers with the familiarity of home. "Zephyr, what's your status?" "Found something you'll want to hear," Zephyr replied, keeping his tone brisk. "Turns out Xylox isn't just another rock. It's a breeding ground for mythical creatures, curated by aliens with big plans." "Elaborate," the voice on the other end ordered, tinged with disbelief. "We've got an AI caretaker offering us a deal to help maintain their operation," Janie interjected. "But it sounds like they're gearing up to turn our myths into something more tangible." "Understood. Return to base immediately. We'll debrief you on arrival." Zephyr nodded, though the person on the other end couldn't see him. "Copy that." "We're on our way." Kellen powered up the shuttle's engines, the familiar hum a comforting reminder of their own reality. "Well, that went better than expected," Janie snorted. "Yeah, assuming we managed to get off this rock without any more surprises." As the shuttle rose, the zoo shrank below them, its secrets hidden once more beneath the alien landscape. But the knowledge they carried, the truth of what lay beneath the surface of Xylox, would not be so easily buried. "Think the Zorathians will let us go without a hitch?" Kellen asked, his voice tinged with a mix of hope and doubt. Zephyr shrugged. "They might, or they might decide we know too much. Either way, we're not out of the woods yet." "But when has that ever stopped us?" Janie added with a wry smile. "Exactly," Zephyr said, as a grin spread across his face. "And if they try to keep us here, well, let's just say humans are pretty good at breaking out of cages." The shuttle climbed higher, the vast expanse of space stretching out before them, a sea of stars, daunting and inviting in equal measure. Behind them, the zoo and its inhabitants faded into the distance, the secrets of Xylox waiting to be unraveled. For now, though, they had a report to make, and a story to tell, one that would challenge everything Earth thought it knew about its place in the universe. And if the Zorathians thought they could keep humanity out of their grand experiment, they were in for a rude awakening. After all, as Zephyr had learned long ago, humans were nothing if not stubborn. And if there was one thing they excelled at, it was rewriting the rules of the game, even when the game was played among the stars. The shuttle hummed a familiar, comforting tune as it slipped through the void between stars, but comfort was in short supply. Zephyr Arcana sat in the cockpit, grimacing at the cosmic insanity they'd unearthed on Xylox. Nothing like finding yourself in an alien petting zoo, just with more chances of being eaten. "We're not out of the zoo yet," he muttered, eyeing the planet's surface shrinking below them. "And if those tentacled librarians decide they don't like our overdue books, we're in trouble." Kellen, at the helm, nodded. "Figures. We finally find a place that's not a barren wasteland, and it's run by extraterrestrial librarians with a god complex." "Not just any complex," Janie chimed in from her seat, her makeshift hairdryer scanner resting on her lap. "It's the we're going to turn dragons into batteries kind of complex." "Well, at least they are aiming high," Kellen said, his eyes fixed on the instruments. "But I don't plan on sticking around for the grand opening." Zephyr leaned back, pondering the absurdity of their situation. "You know, there's got to be a special place in the universe for the kind of people who think weaponized unicorns are a good idea." "Maybe there's a self-help group," Janie suggested, shooting him a wry smile. "Mythical Creatures Anonymous." "First step, admit you have a problem." Before Zephyr could respond, the shuttle's alert system blared to life, flashing ominous red across their displays. "Looks like our friends at the zoo want us to stay for an encore," Kellen said, trying to mask his concern with a sardonic edge. Zephyr swore under his breath. "What is it now?" Janie checked her scanner. Security measures coming online. They're locking us in like we're some kind of cosmic zoo exhibit. Well, that's a hell of a thank you, Kellen grumbled, fingers flying over the console as he attempted to break free of the gravitational grip tightening around them. Zepha's mind raced. Being caught in an alien flytrap was not the day at the office he had in mind. Great, he said with dry humor. Trapped by bookish aliens who think Frankenstein is a blueprint. As Kellen maneuvered the shuttle, the tension inside grew as palpable as the gravitational field outside. Zepha eyed the controls, mentally running through every scenario. Okay, we need options, fast. Could try talking to them, Janie suggested. Convince them we're more trouble than we're worth. Zepha couldn't help but laugh. Talk them out of their cosmic plan. Sure, why not? Maybe we'll get lucky and they'll call the whole thing off. Optimism never hurt anyone, Kellen said, though the skepticism in his voice was clear. But I'm not betting on it working. Zepha considered the obelisk they'd encountered. It had responded to them, pulsed with energy. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to communicate with the things inside. Janie, can that scanner of yours pick up anything useful? She gave him a sideways glance. It's not a miracle worker, but I can try. As Janie fiddled with the improvised scanner, Zepha leaned over to help, their collective focus shifting from the grim immediacy of their situation to the enigmas wrapped in alien stone. Why do you think these creatures have been spared? Zepha asked, more to himself than anyone else. Because they are interesting, Janie replied. We're talking about entities that shouldn't exist outside of dreams or nightmares. Maybe that's it, Zepha mused. Maybe to the Zorathians they're just another form of energy, just more potential to exploit. Sounds like a fun party, Kellen remarked, adjusting the shuttle's trajectory to wobble on the razor's edge of the alien grip. Come for the cosmic zoo, stay for the existential crisis. Only if they try to serve us as hors d'oeuvres, Zepha quipped. Janie's scanner buzzed, drawing their attention back. I'm picking up something. Weird, she said, squinting at the array of unintelligible symbols dancing across the device's screen. Define weird, Zepha asked, his curiosity piqued despite himself. Signals, patterns. It's like they're trying to communicate, Janie explained, her voice tinged with excitement. And it feels like they are familiar with our stories. Great, a telepathic book club, Kellen muttered, trying to juggle skepticism and concern. What do they want? Autographs. Zepha shifted his attention back to Janie. If they know stories, maybe we can use that. Engage them on their own terms, Janie nodded, already immersed in deciphering the flow of alien symbols and signals. Let's hope they are in the mood for a little human conversation. While Janie tinkered with the scanner, Zepha considered the risks. Communicating with creatures that shouldn't exist, all while being pawns in an alien experiment, was far from comforting. But it was the only play they had. Any luck? Zepha asked, glancing over at Janie. More like educated guesswork, she replied. But I think I can get a message across. Fine, Zepha said, taking a deep breath. Let's see if these things are more Stephen King or Mary Shelley. Janie keyed in a sequence, sending a signal into the ether, a digital plea for recognition. The wait was agonizingly slow, the outside universe forgotten as they held their collective breath. Then the response came, a series of rapid pulses on the scanner, a primitive form of Morse code if Morse had been an alien entity with a penchant for mythology. They're responding, Janie said, astonishment coloring her words. And they know everything. Zepha's mind whirled. Everything. Everything we've ever told, written, or dreamed about them, Janie clarified. It's like they have a library of our imagination. Just what I always wanted, Kellen said, his sarcasm unshaken. An alien hive mind with a subscription to the human psyche. Can we use that? Zepha asked, the cogs in his mind spinning faster than he'd like. Janie nodded cautiously. We can try. If they are aware of human stories, maybe we can convince them to help us. So, what? We asked the dragon to fly us out of here. Kellen's skepticism was palpable, but beneath it lay a glimmer of hope. Stranger things have happened, Zepha replied. And if there's one thing we've learned as humans, it's that stories have power. With newfound determination, they delved into the bizarre exchange with the mythical creatures. Their communication was more feeling than language, an understanding woven from the threads of countless human tales. "Looks like they are not thrilled about being lab rats," Janie said, interpreting the signals that poured through her scanner. "Can't blame them," Zephyr said. "Nobody likes being part of someone else's bedtime story." As they worked, the shuttle lurched, a reminder that they were indeed still trapped. The Zorathians' grip had tightened, and time was slipping through their fingers like cosmic sand. "Guess we're still on the menu," Kellen said grimly. Zephyr glanced at the console, then at his crewmates, that familiar defiance sparking in his chest. "Not if we have anything to say about it." Janie sent another signal, a plea to the creatures they'd inadvertently come to rely on. The response was slower this time, but even more distinct, an agreement of sorts, an understanding that transcended the boundaries of their respective realities. "They're willing to help," Janie announced, a hint of triumph in her voice. "But we need to give them something in return." "The way I see it," Zephyr said, "we're offering them freedom." "Freedom's a good incentive," Kellen agreed. "But can they actually get us out of here?" Janie's scanner flashed with possibilities. A map of energy patterns, a weak spot in the Zorathian security measures. "They can guide us," she said confidently. "If we can follow their lead, we might just slip through." Zephyr's grin was wolfish, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "Then let's give these librarians a lesson in creative escape." With the guidance of their mythical allies, the team rallied, channeling their combined expertise into one desperate gambit to break free of the zoo's iron grip. Kellen manipulated the shuttle's controls with renewed vigor, transforming the ship into a nimble dancer in the Zorathian web. Janie relayed the creature's instructions, each pulse of information a lifeline between humanity and the impossible. "We're cutting it close," Kellen warned, his hands steady, his voice laced with tension. Zephyr nodded, his focus unyielding. "Close is good enough if it gets us out." The shuttle shuddered as they reached the edge of the alien containment field. Energy crackled around them, a tangible reminder of the cosmic forces at play. "Now!" Janie shouted, her eyes locked onto the scanner's display. Kellen responded with precision, driving the shuttle forward, skimming the edge of the field with the grace of a predator in flight. A jarring lurch, a cascade of sparks, and suddenly they were free, sailing through the void once more. "We did it," Kellen breathed, the relief almost palpable. Zephyr allowed himself a moment of triumph. "Thanks to our mythical friends." Janie nodded, her expression softening. "Turns out they're not just stories after all, and thank God for that," Zephyr said. "Because as much as I love a good fairy tale, I'd rather not live in one." As the shuttle gained speed, the menace of the zoo faded behind them, leaving only the vast expanse of space ahead. They were free, but with freedom came responsibility. A responsibility to share what they'd learned, to warn Earth of the impending threat. The humans might have been players on a cosmic stage, but they were determined to write their own ending. "Next stop," Zephyr said, "home, and a damn good story to tell." Kellen and Janie exchanged a glance, their camaraderie forged in the fires of a shared insanity. "Can't wait," Kellen said with a grin. "Though I might leave out the part about us almost becoming mythical monster chow." "Yeah," Janie agreed. "Some things are better left to the imagination." And with that, they surged towards the stars, a trio of irreverent dreamers carrying the fate of humanity in their hands. The shuttle's interior was a symphony of blinking lights and frustrated grunts. Kellen buried himself in the console, muttering something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like a curse aimed at the Zorathians' mothers. Meanwhile, Zephyr and Janie debated the latest tactical blunder masquerading as a plan. "Okay," Zephyr said, leaning back against the cockpit wall with the kind of resignation one usually reserved for tax audits or dental work. "Disabling their security system is the only way we're getting out of this cosmic petting zoo." Janie's hairdryer turn scanner crackled to life. "You're talking about hacking alien tech with, let me check, duct tape and chewing gum," Zephyr shrugged. Got a better idea? Not unless you count prayer, Janie replied, her eyes never leaving the scanner. And believe me, I prayed the last time I tried not to burn toast, Kellen snorted, glancing up from the controls. Prayer, duct tape, and a little human ingenuity were practically a how-to guide for cosmic survival. More like how to die trying, Zeph quipped. But let's not split hairs. Janie tapped at her device, a beat-up relic that looked like it had survived a bar brawl with a toaster. If I can isolate the main power node, we might be able to short-circuit their defenses. Imagine their surprise when a bunch of monkeys with a death wish knocked them offline. Monkeys with a death wish, Kellen repeated, as if savoring the flavor. I'll make sure to add that to my resume. Right under can pilot under duress. Their laughter was interrupted by a series of metallic bangs, reverberating through the vessel. Zeph's expression darkened like a storm cloud weighed down by too much bad news. That'd be the Zorathians realizing we're up to no good. Well, isn't that just peachy? Kellen said, twisting a dial with more force than strictly necessary. They'll be sending their welcoming committee any minute now. Zeph smirked. If we're lucky, maybe they'll bring snacks. Janie's scanner beeped, signaling the completion of whatever arcane task she'd set it on. Got it. I've pinpointed the security node. It's buried deeper in the zoo, of course, because the universe just loves making things difficult. Kellen nodded, his hands dancing over the controls. Adjusting course. Hang on, because we're diving straight into the dragon's den. Zeph grinned. Great. Just what I always wanted. An up-close and personal encounter with mythological creatures that could eat us. The shuttle veered sharply, and they plunged into the belly of the beast. The zoo sprawled out beneath them, a twisted amalgamation of fantasy and nightmare. Enclosures shimmered with otherworldly energy, housing creatures that defied reason and sanity. Watch out for the unicorns, Kellen said, with the kind of dry humor that made you want to slap him or buy him a drink. Pretty sure they're not interested in rainbows and sugar. More like impalement and morning starvation, Janie added, her eyes fixed on the instruments. We're getting close. The shuttle bucked and weaved through the chaotic landscape of containment fields and mythological beasts. They caught glimpses of griffins with wings like razor blades and serpentine creatures coiled around towers of light, each more improbable than the last. There's our target, Janie shouted over the din, pointing to a cluster of alien pylons sparking with energy. That's the security node. Perfect, Zeph said, his voice tinged with irony. Right in the heart of madness. The node was nestled within a grove of towering obelisks that hummed with barely contained power. The kind of place that made you question your life choices while simultaneously wondering if you'd remembered to feed the cat. How do you plan to disable that thing? Kellen asked, maneuvering the shuttle into position, the engines whining in protest. Zeph looked at Janie, who was already rummaging through her tools with the intense focus of an underpaid handyman. Janie, you think you can get us in there? She flashed a grin that was equal parts brave and insane. Piece of cake. Just cover my back. I love it when a plan comes together, Zeph deadpanned, already strapping on his helmet. Especially when it's held together by sheer desperation. The shuttle touched down with a bone-rattling thud, the trio scrambling out into the neon underbrush. The air was thick with the scent of burnt ozone and the dreams of 1,000 mythmakers, a heady brew that threatened to overwhelm the senses. Janie led the way with her trusty scanner, its readout a swirling vortex of alien data and interference. We're going in, boys. Keep your wits about you. Wouldn't dream of losing them, Kellen replied, eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of movement. Not that we have many to spare. The obelisks loomed, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out with malicious intent. Janie darted forward, her fingers dancing over the alien console like a pianist on a caffeine binge. Zeph watched her work, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. We don't have long before they notice, he said, more to himself than anyone else. Don't need long, Janie replied, her voice a cocktail of concentration and adrenaline. Just a few more seconds. Those seconds stretched into eternity, the kind of interminable wait that made you wonder if the universe was just one big joke, and you were the punchline. And then, like the universe had finally decided to throw them a bone, the node's lights flickered and dimmed. A low hum filled the air, the sound of a leviathan slumbering, its defenses momentarily down. "Got it," Janie said, her face lighting up with triumph. "The system's offline, at least for now." Zephyr allowed himself a rare moment of hope, only to have it shattered by the unmistakable roar of approaching engines. "Time to go," he said, urgency propelling them back to the shuttle. They scrambled inside just as the first of the Zorathian craft appeared, sleek and predatory, their hulls gleaming in the artificial light of the zoo. "Looks like they brought the cavalry," Kellen observed, taking the helm with the kind of calm that only comes from a lifetime of bad decisions. Zephyr strapped himself in, adrenaline singing in his veins. "Let's see if they can handle a little turbulence." As the Zorathian ships bore down on them, Kellen pushed the shuttle to its limits, weaving through the labyrinthine zoo with reckless abandon. Each maneuver was a testament to his skill, or perhaps his total lack of concern for personal safety. The Zorathian reinforcements were relentless, their weapons scorching the air around the shuttle. Janie's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and urgent. "We're not gonna last long like this. Tell me something I don't know," Kellen shot back, wrestling with the controls. Zephyr searched for a solution, his mind racing. "Janie, any chance those mythical friends of yours can give us another hand?" She glanced at her scanner, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "I might be able to reach out to them, but it'll take a moment." "Then take it," Zephyr commanded, his gaze locked on the oncoming ships. "We'll buy you whatever time we can." Janie nodded, already lost in the tangled web of alien signals, her fingers flying over the controls with fevered desperation. "Hang in there," Kellen muttered, throwing the shuttle into a wild spiral that left their pursuers momentarily floundering. Zephyr held on, the G-forces threatening to crush him into his seat. "Remind me to add roller coaster operator to your list of skills, Kellen." Their predicament was growing more desperate by the second. The Zorathian ships were relentless, their weapons lighting up the void with deadly precision. Janie's fingers never stopped moving, her concentration absolute. "I'm almost through," she said, voice tight with tension. "Almost isn't gonna cut it," Kellen warned, avoiding another salvo with inches to spare. Zephyr felt the weight of inevitability pressing down on them, like the universe had decided today was the day to collect on their debts. And then Janie slammed her hand down on the console, her expression triumphant. "Got it. Our friends are on their way." The response was immediate. The very air around them seemed to shimmer, the mythological creatures stirring from their slumber. A dragon soared into view, its scales glinting like molten metal, while a phoenix blazed a trail of fire across the sky. The Zorathian ships faltered, their pilots no doubt questioning the wisdom of engaging in aerial combat with a dragon. "Now that's what I call backup," Zephyr said, unable to keep the disbelief from his voice. With their mythical allies providing cover, the shuttle surged forward, weaving through the chaos with renewed purpose. The Zorathians regrouped, their formation shattered by the unexpected intervention. Kellen whooped as they broke free of the zoo's confines, the way ahead clear. "We're out." Zephyr's laughter was part relief, part disbelief. "Thanks to a dragon and a bunch of crazy humans." Janie slumped back, exhaustion catching up to her. "Who knew fairy tales could save your life?" As the shuttle sped towards the stars, the remnants of the Zorathian fleet receded into the distance. They'd escaped, but the battle was far from over. "Let's hope they don't follow us out here," Kellen said, his voice tinged with the kind of grim satisfaction that comes only after a narrow escape. Zephyr nodded, gazing out at the vast expanse of space. "If they do, we'll be ready." Janie grinned, her earlier exhaustion giving way to determination. "And we've got stories to tell, stories about dragons and daring escapes." Zephyr chuckled, settling back into his seat. "Not to mention the part where we almost became alien appetizers." As they journeyed through the void, the adrenaline ebbed, leaving them with the sobering reality of their situation. They'd won this round, but the war was far from over. "We'll need to warn Earth," Zephyr said, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a too familiar cloak. Kellen nodded. "Tell them what we've seen." "What's coming?" Janie's expression was one of fierce resolve. "And maybe, just maybe, inspire others to keep fighting." Zephyr smiled at her words, knowing that even in the darkest of times, hope was their greatest weapon. As they sailed through the stars, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that they weren't alone, they couldn't help but wonder what new challenges awaited them beyond the horizon. But for now, at least, they were free. Free to fight another day, free to tell their tale, and free to dream of a future where humanity could stand against the cosmos and emerge victorious. And as the stars stretched out before them, infinite and unknowable, they dared to hope that this was only the beginning. The universe has a strange way of reminding you how utterly insignificant you are, especially when you're cornered by a pack of alien wolves and a dragon that decided to take a nostalgic trip down memory lane. Dr. Zephyr Arcana, sitting in the cockpit of their beleaguered shuttle, stared at the onslaught of incoming Zorathian forces. A dragon from Earth's mythology hovered ominously, letting out a roar that could make your soul do the Macarena. "Well, this is exactly how I imagined my death," Kellen quipped, fingers dancing over the console in a futile attempt to make the situation less dire. Trapped between a rock and a scaly place. Zephyr reached for the holographic display, his mind a paradox of calm and chaos. "I think we've established that the universe's sense of humor is on par with a drunk toddler." Janie Shrike, still buzzing from the earlier adrenaline rush, didn't take her eyes off the scanner. "Does anyone else think getting charbroiled by a dragon would make for a killer eulogy? Only if you're the one giving it." Zephyr pushed his glasses up his nose, a gesture more habit than necessity aboard a spaceship where grime was considered a fashion statement. The dragon, seemingly undecided about which side of the moral alignment chart it wanted to be on today, swooped dangerously close, its fiery breath singeing the shuttle's hull. "I suppose it's too late to offer it some jam and a nice chat?" Kellen asked, sarcasm dripping from every word. "Yeah, Kellen. I'm sure it'll be reasonable once it's done flambeing us," Zephyr replied, his voice a dry rasp of gallows humor. Amidst the chaos, a voice crackled through the calm, smooth and resonant. Vordek, the mysterious, possibly menacing telepathic presence they had encountered earlier. "Humans, your struggle is futile. Surrender now and perhaps we will be merciful." Zephyr rolled his eyes. "Oh great, the intergalactic customer service line. Can I be on hold instead?" Janie, her curiosity sparked by the ethereal voice, whispered to Zephyr, "Think we can call his bluff?" "Only if you want to test the theory that there's life after death," Zephyr replied drolly. Kellen banked the shuttle sharply, narrowly avoiding another barrage of dragon fire. "Does he sound like the kind of guy who knows the meaning of mercy?" "We'll find out soon enough," Zephyr muttered, his brain frantically searching for a flicker of hope among the rapidly dwindling options. Just when it seemed like the universe was about to pull the curtain on their lives, Janie's scanner beeped with unexpected enthusiasm. "Hold on," she announced, eyes widening. "I'm picking up something." "It's a hidden control room tucked away like a prize nobody wants." Zephyr's interest peaked. "A control room, could it?" "Potentially free the creatures and disable the Zorathians' control," she confirmed, her voice a cocktail of chance and desperation. "But reaching it is like trying to untangle headphones in the dark." Zephyr felt a flicker of hope ignite, the sort that usually got snuffed out by the harsh realities of cosmic life. "All right, team, new plan. We make our way to that control room," Kellen snorted. "Oh, easy. And here I thought we'd have to do something difficult." "Keep the sarcasm coming. It's the only thing keeping me sane," Janie shot back, her fingers a blur across the console. Zephyr glanced at the dragon, its massive wings casting shadows that seemed to mock their meager existence. All right, listen up. We're going to need a distraction. Something big enough to make the Zorathians and their winged friend take a coffee break. Kellen, eternally irreverent, raised an eyebrow. Got a giant kick-me sign handy. Janie, ever the pragmatist, interrupted. We could use the shuttle's remaining power to scramble their communications. It'll buy us some time but leave us dead in the water. Sounds like a plan, Zephyr said, suppressing a grin. Or at least a really bad idea we have no choice but to consider. Story of our lives, Kellen chimed in as he began rerouting the shuttle's systems. Here's hoping the afterlife is half as exciting. As the shuttle's systems hummed in protest, Zephyr felt the familiar lurch of readiness settle in his gut. Janie, get ready to make a break for that control room. Kellen, you're with me on distracting our fire-breathing buddy here. Janie nodded, securing her makeshift scanner. You know, if we survive this, I'm buying the first round of drinks. Hell, I'll buy the whole damn bar, Kellen added as he initiated the communication scramble. The shuttle shuddered, lights flickering as the power drained away like hope slipping through their fingers. The dragon, momentarily disoriented by the electronic interference, hesitated in its relentless pursuit, giving their shuttle a precious window of opportunity. Now or never, folks, Zephyr declared, his voice laced with the kind of grim determination born from too many close calls. Kellen shot him a grin that was more manic than reassuring. Ready to lead the dragon on a merry little chase, always, Zephyr replied, his heart thudding with the reckless thrill of a man who knew he was dangerously close to running out of luck. With a nod to Janie, who was already sprinting toward the newly discovered control room, Zephyr and Kellen maneuvered the shuttle, teasing the dragon further from their comrade's path. The beast roared in frustration, its fiery breath scorching the starry backdrop. Keep her busy, Janie's voice crackled over the comms as she darted through the chaotic labyrinth of the alien zoo, her scanner guiding her like fate's unreliable co-pilot. The Zorathian ship struggled to maintain cohesion under the onslaught of scrambled signals, their pilots visibly rattled. It wasn't much, but sometimes a tiny advantage is all you have, and sometimes it's all you need. Come on, Zephyr coaxed, directing the dragon's attention away from the control room. Over here, you overgrown set of scales. We're the ones you want, Kellen chuckled despite the gravity of their situation. Who knew taunting mythical creatures would be on today's agenda? Just another day surviving in the cosmic madhouse, Zephyr replied, focusing all his energy on this last-ditch gamble. Janie, feeling the adrenaline-fueled rush of imminent success, reached the entrance to the control room. With a well-placed kick, she was inside, greeted by a console that hummed with the kind of potential only chaos could bring. Inside, she reported, her fingers dancing across the alien interface. Starting to think my whole life was leading up to pressing random buttons on alien tech. Make it count, Zephyr urged, his gaze locked on the dragon looming large on their rear sensors. Because if you don't, we might turn into a permanent part of the zoo's exhibit. Wouldn't want to be stuffed and mounted, Kellen quipped. At least not without dinner first. Janie took a deep breath, fingers poised over the console, ready to play the intergalactic slots. Here goes nothing, she murmured, activating the control room systems. The effect was immediate. The zoo's containment fields flickered, a breath of freedom whispering through the bonds holding Earth's mythical creatures captive. The dragon paused, its attention diverted as its bindings shimmered and waned. Zephyr's heart skipped a beat, a wild hope sparking in his chest. It's working, Janie. The creatures, sensing their freedom, surged into action, their combined power a symphony of defiance against their captors. The dragon, now untethered from its leash, let out a triumphant roar, throwing its allegiance to its liberators. The Zorathian forces, realizing their control was slipping, regrouped in a desperate attempt to regain command. But it was too late. The balance of power had shifted, and the creatures of myth were done playing the roles assigned to them. Looks like we've got a fairy tale ending after all, Kellen remarked, unable to suppress a grin as the dragon turned on their shared enemy. More like a temporary reprieve, Zephyr countered, though his relief was palpable. But I'll take what I can get. Janie's voice, breathless with victory, came through the comms. Control room's on our side now. We're good to go. The shuttle, powered by sheer willpower and a dash of mechanical miracle, soared free of the chaos, the dragon and its ilk covering their retreat. As they sped toward the safety of open space, the Zorathian ships fell into disarray, their ranks broken by the rebellion of their former captives. Free at last, Zephyr announced, a rare smile touching his lips. Thanks to Janie and a little cosmic justice. Janie, still riding the high of success, replied with a chuckle, and maybe a bit of magic. They drifted into the void, the stars beckoning them to a new horizon, one filled with possibilities and perils alike. Kellen, settling back with a sigh, said, next time, let's try saving the universe without playing tag with dragons, yeah. Zephyr laughed, the sound a defiant note against the backdrop of infinity. Where's the fun in that? As they left the chaos of the zoo behind, the crew knew they were far from finished. There was still a war to win, worlds to save, and tales to tell. But for now, they'd savor the victory, however fleeting it might be, and prepare for whatever the universe had in store. Because in the end, the fight wasn't over until the last cynic had their say, and the last optimist found their faith renewed amidst the stars. Zephyr Arcana looked out at the cosmic chaos swirling outside the shuttle's windows, dragons, liberated and feisty, turning their fire on the Zorathian forces. Space was a hell of a lot more interesting when you had mythical beasts on your side. He leaned back, shaking his head. Well, Janie, he said into the comms, you've done it. You've turned this disaster into a slightly smaller disaster. Janie, still breathless and slightly giddy from her recent hacking success, replied, what can I say? I like to embrace chaos. It's like a warm, slightly menacing hug. Just remember, Kellen chimed in, his sarcasm cutting through the static, those dragons have their own agendas, probably involving crispy fried humans as a delicacy. Zephyr chuckled. Yeah, well, can't blame them. We make everything taste like chicken. Across the comms, Janie was busy multitasking, her fingers flying over the alien console like a virtuoso on a caffeine high. Okay, so we've got dragons and other creatures causing havoc. What's our next move, fearless leader? Zephyr scratched his chin, pondering the ragtag rebellion they'd accidentally started. We need more allies. The Zorathians aren't going to give up just because their pets have turned on them. We need to convince more of these zoo residents that the enemy of their enemy is their new drinking buddy. Well, let's just hope they don't have a taste for human-flavored cocktails, Kellen remarked, adjusting the shuttle's trajectory to avoid a particularly aggressive swoop by an insectoid creature the size of a small shuttle. Because I left my bar tab back on Earth, Janie laughed. You mean the one that got you banned from 3 separate star systems? For life, Kellen added, not sounding particularly remorseful. But hey, at least I'm not boring. Zephyr focused on the task at hand. All right, Janie, can you patch into the zoo's broadcast system? Give these creatures a little pep talk. Janie rolled her eyes, though no one could see it. Sure, because rousing speeches are exactly what I excel at. Just give me a minute. As Janie fiddled with the console, Zephyr scanned the chaos through the shuttle's holographic display, assessing which creatures might be open to a little interstellar team building. The Zorathians were regrouping, but their ranks were a mess. The dragons had done a good job of turning the battle into a circus. Now it was time to get the whole zoo involved. Janie's voice crackled over the comms, breaking his train of thought. I'm in, ready for some motivational speaking. Remember, Zephyr advised, be charming. I'm always charming, Janie replied with a snort. Then, taking a deep breath, she initiated the broadcast. Attention, all alien life forms currently residing in this hellhole, Janie's voice blared, echoing across the zoo complex. This is your invitation to join the rebellion. The Zorathians have kept you as trophies, but now's your chance to show them why that was a bad idea. Together, we can kick them back to whatever miserable corner of the universe they came from. So let's turn this zoo into their worst nightmare. Zephyr listened, impressed despite himself. Not bad. You could run for office on some backwater asteroid with oratory skills like that. I'll pass, Janie replied. I'd rather keep my soul. The creatures began to respond, their movements more coordinated now, rallying to the call of their unexpected human allies. Dragons, giant beasts, and other impossible silhouettes moved as one, setting upon the Zorathian forces with newfound fervor. Zephyr noted the shift, feeling a flicker of hope. It's working. They're actually buying it. I knew I should have gotten a degree in motivational psychology instead of xenobiology, Janie quipped, returning her attention to the console. Now let's just make sure our new friends don't turn on us once the dust settles. Kellen, who had been watching the unfolding chaos, grinned. At least we've got front row seats to the universe's weirdest uprising. Zephyr couldn't help but laugh. Yeah, and if we survive, we'll have stories that'll get us free drinks everywhere from here to Alpha Centauri. As the shuttle weaved through the melee, dodging Zorathian fire and the occasional stray dragon, Zephyr and his team maintained their focus. The balance of power was teetering, and the goal was to tip it in favor of freedom, however temporary that might be. Janie suddenly broke in, her voice urgent. Heads up, I've got a large energy signature heading our way. Could be the Zorathians' last desperate play. Zephyr nodded, his mind racing. Probably their flagship. They'll throw everything they have at us to regain control. Great, Kellen grunted, checking the shuttle's dwindling energy reserves. And here I was hoping for a quiet day. Zephyr's fingers danced over the controls, his mind working at hyperspeed. We need to get the creatures to focus on that ship. It's the linchpin. Take it out and the rest will crumble. Janie, quick on the uptake, patched back into the broadcast system. Okay, listen up, her voice echoed once more. There's a big nasty ship heading your way. Let's show it what happens when you underestimate the creatures of the cosmos. The response was almost immediate. The dragons surged forward, leading the assault, their massive bodies and fiery breath paving the way. Other creatures followed, each a bizarre and deadly beauty in motion. Kellen watched the spectacle, a look of awe mixing with his usual irreverence. Who knew giant space critters would be the galaxy's newest superheroes? Zephyr grinned despite the tension. Hey, everyone loves an underdog story. Even if the underdogs are the size of skyscrapers. Janie's voice chimed in, filled with determination. Let's make sure we're not the footnote. As the creatures converged on the Zorathian flagship, the shuttle's sensors picked up the frantic activity of their enemies, scrambling in disarray. The balance had shifted indeed, and it looked like the universe had decided to favor the brave, at least for today. Zephyr's heart pounded with the thrill of battle, the kind that only comes when the odds are stacked against you and stubbornness is all you have left. Ready to finish this fight? Do we have a choice? Kellen asked, though his tone was more rhetorical than questioning. Nope, Zephyr replied, but let's pretend we do. With that, the shuttle joined the charge, dodging through the chaos, adding its firepower to the fray. The Zorathians, now caught between the proverbial rock and a hard place, except the rock was a spaceship and the hard place was a horde of mythical beasts, were finally crumbling. The flagship, under the combined assault, began to falter, its shields flickering before collapsing entirely. Zephyr could almost taste the victory, but he knew better than to count his chickens before they hatched. Or in this case, dragons before they roasted the enemy. Janie's voice cut through, breathless with urgency. We've got to hit the core. It's the only way to stop them from regrouping. Zephyr nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. Then let's make it count. Kellen adjusted their trajectory, pushing the shuttle to its limits. Hope you've got a plan that doesn't end with us as space debris. The best plans always have a little risk, Zephyr replied, focused and steady. All we need is one shot. As they closed in on the flagship, weaving through the chaos, Zephyr couldn't help but reflect on the madness of it all. From a simple zoo escape to an interspecies alliance, their journey had been anything but predictable. But then predictability was for people who didn't live to see another day. Janie, ever the pragmatist, prepped the shuttle's weapons for a final volley. Okay, let's see if the universe is on our side. Zephyr grinned, adrenaline coursing through him. And if not, it's been a hell of a ride. With the targeting system locked on, they fired, releasing a barrage of energy that tore through the Zorathian flagship's defenses. The ship buckled under the assault, explosions rippling across its hull as it began to break apart. The zoo's inhabitants, now fully in control, let out a collective roar, their victory echoing across the stars. The Zorathian forces, leaderless and outmatched, retreated, leaving the humans and their new allies in control of the battlefield. As silence descended, broken only by the distant crackle of dying ships, Zephyr let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Well, folks, looks like we did it. Kellen leaned back, a satisfied grin on his face. And all it took was a zoo full of pissed-off mythical creatures. Why didn't I think of that before? Janie's voice, laced with exhaustion but undeniably triumphant, echoed over the comms. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready for that drink now. Zephyr nodded, feeling the tension drain from his muscles. You and me both. As the adrenaline faded, the stars stretched out before them, a vast expanse of possibility and danger. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Still, for now, they could savor the moment, a rare and unexpected victory in a universe that rarely played fair. With their newfound allies, the team set a course for the next horizon, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. After all, in a galaxy filled with chaos, a little bit of human ingenuity and a dash of mythical magic could go a long way. Dr. Zephyr Arcana stood in the shuttle's control room, where the blinking lights and relentless alarms were harmonizing into a cacophony of chaos. He wondered idly if maybe he should have taken up a less stressful career, like babysitting black holes or wrangling sentient feedback loops. "All right, team," he said, his voice steady despite the impending doom. "Let's wrap this up before the universe decides to screw us over again." Kellen leaned back in his chair, flipping a switch that made the shuttle hum with a sound like a caffeinated bee trapped in a tin can. "You know, Zephyr, if we survive this, I'm starting a religion based on your uncanny ability to get us into deep shit. It'll be called the Church of Impeccable Timing." Zephyr snorted, his fingers dancing across the controls like a concert pianist on speed. "You can be the first martyr. Now focus, we've got a galaxy to save." Meanwhile, Janie Shrike was busy on her console, hacking into the zoo's mainframe with the finesse of a cat burglar, if said burglar had a penchant for using duct tape and chewing gum as essential tools. "All right, I'm in," she announced, her voice carrying a note of triumph. "Ready to rewrite the story of the century." "You mean the story of our impending obliteration." "Can't wait for the reviews," Kellen quipped, his eyes glued to the display, which showed a very angry, very large Zorathian flagship approaching like a pissed-off god of war. The creatures from the zoo were still rampaging, their newfound freedom translating into a collective middle finger to the Zorathian forces. Dragons, with their avant-garde attitude towards personal space, swooped in, setting entire ranks ablaze. Tentacled librarians, those haughty bastards, were using their appendages to disarm enemy soldiers, all the while maintaining an air of intellectual superiority. Zephyr watched the chaos unfold, his mind buzzing with possibilities. "Janie, think you can give this ragtag rebellion a little more oomph?" Janie smirked, fingers working furiously. "Watch and learn, boys. Let's see if Earth's bedtime stories can pack a punch." With a few deft keystrokes, Janie accessed the zoo's broadcast system again, this time tapping into the mythical creature's latent powers, creations of human imagination, manifestations of Earth's creativity. The holographic display flared to life, showing familiar shapes and forms. Dragons, unicorns, titans, all from Earth's folklore, now amplified into reality thanks to Janie's not-so-gentle coaxing. The effect was immediate and devastating. The dragons, no longer just oversized lizards with fiery indigestion, transformed into majestic creatures of pure legend. Their scales shimmered with the colors of a sunset after an apocalypse, their roars echoing like a rock concert for the damned. Kellen blinked, momentarily forgetting to breathe. Well, I'll be damned. We just turned fiction into fact. How the hell did we manage that? Zephyr shrugged, trying to play it cool. Human creativity. Never underestimate the power of a good story. The Zorathian flagship, now the focal point of every mythical creature's wrath, began to flounder under the assault. Its shields, once formidable, flickered like a dying candle, and its hull groaned with the strain of holding back the impossible. "Looks like they bit off more than they can chew," Janie observed, her voice tinged with satisfaction. "Can you believe they thought they could handle weaponized unicorns? Amateurs." Zephyr watched as the unicorns, previously thought to be marginally less dangerous than a spork, charged with their horned heads lowered, leaving a trail of destruction and sparkles in their wake. And to think, some people still believe unicorns are all rainbows and sunshine. The telepathic presence of Vortek, that slithery bastard, slithered into their minds, his voice a cold whisper. "Humans, do you believe you have won? This is but a temporary victory." Kellen rolled his eyes, unimpressed by the psychic intrusion. "Vortek, mate, you're like a bad song that's stuck in our heads. Give it a rest, will you?" Zephyr, unfazed by Vortek's taunts, focused on the task at hand. "Ignore him. We've got bigger fish to fry, and by fry, I mean incinerate." The flagship, its defenses crumbling, began an erratic retreat, clearly not up to facing the wrath of creatures brought to life by centuries of human storytelling. Zephyr took a moment to relish the sight, the once mighty Zorathians, now reduced to a footnote in a tale of human ingenuity and mythical madness. With the battle reaching its zenith, Zephyr felt a surge of determination. "All right, folks, let's push these bastards out and seal the deal. Janie, give me everything you've got." Janie nodded, her fingers a blur over the console. "You got it, boss." Time to rewrite the ending. With one final push, the creatures, now an undivided force of nature, descended upon the Zorathian flagship. Fire, claws, and pure imagination rained down, reducing the once feared behemoth to scrap metal and regret. Kellen watched, a grin spreading across his face. "I love it when a plan comes together in the most batshit insane way possible." Zephyr couldn't help but chuckle, adrenaline coursing through him like a river of liquid chaos. "I guess fiction really is stranger than truth." As the flagship's remains were scattered across the battlefield, the Zorathian forces, now leaderless and demoralized, began a hasty retreat, their ships peeling away like a scab from a wound. Vortek's presence faded, his parting words a bitter echo. "This is not over." Zephyr shook his head, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "It never is, but that's tomorrow's problem." With the immediate threat neutralized, the creatures let out a triumphant roar, their victory resonating across the zoo, now a monument to their freedom and a graveyard for their captors. The shuttle hummed steadily as Zephyr, Kellen, and Janie regrouped, the weight of their achievement sinking in. They had turned the tide, and maybe, just maybe, bought themselves a little peace in this unforgiving universe. "I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling pretty invincible right now," Janie said, leaning back with a satisfied sigh. "What's next on the agenda, Zephyr?" Zephyr glanced around the control room, the aftermath of battle still buzzing in his veins. "First, we get the hell out of this death trap. Then we find somewhere remote to lay low and figure out our next move." Kellen chuckled, the sound a mix of relief and exhaustion. "Preferably somewhere without homicidal aliens or mythical beasts with vendettas." Zephyr nodded, setting the shuttle on a course for the nearest uncharted sector. "Agreed. And after that, maybe a nice, quiet drink, somewhere we can toast to our unlikely success." Janie grinned, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "And to think, all this started because someone thought it was a good idea to turn dragons into batteries." Kellen snorted, shaking his head. "If they want to be energy efficient, maybe they should try windmills instead." As the shuttle slipped away from the remnants of the battle, Zephyr allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. They had defied the odds, thrown chaos into order's lap, and emerged victorious. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't permanent, but it was theirs. And in a universe where survival was never guaranteed, that was more than enough. The stars stretched out before them, a vast, endless expanse of possibility and peril. But for now, they had won a hard-fought peace, however temporary. And with that peace came the promise of another day, another story waiting to be written. Zephyr leaned back, the weight of responsibility easing just a fraction. You know, guys, maybe we should start writing our own bedtime stories. I hear they are pretty effective. Janie laughed, the sound a bomb against the chaos. As long as they don't involve Zorathians or telepathic jerks, I'm in. Kellen joined in, his voice laced with humor. I've got a few ideas. But first, I think we deserve that drink. Agreed, Zephyr said, steering them towards their next adventure. And let's make it a strong one. As they sailed into the unknown, ready to face whatever the universe threw their way, they carried with them the knowledge that sometimes, just sometimes, the little guys could win. All it took was a bit of imagination, a lot of courage, and the willingness to embrace chaos with open arms. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to keep hope alive in even the darkest corners of the cosmos. The shuttle drifted away from the charred remains of the battlefield, a scene resembling the aftermath of a barbecue gone horribly wrong. Zephyr Arcana, the unfortunate messiah of this improbable rebellion, leaned back in his seat. His fingers hovered over the ship's controls like a musician who'd just finished a symphony composed entirely of explosions and mayhem. Well, that wasn't on the bucket list, Zephyr muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Kellen, lounging in the co-pilot's seat with the casual ease of someone who'd just narrowly avoided death for the umpteenth time, smirked. Maybe not, but it sure beats dying in obscurity. Course, dying in general is still on the table, given our track record. Janie Shrike, the miracle worker of the console, stretched her arms with a satisfied groan. First time I've seen bedtime stories save the universe. You'd think we'd be more into reading now. Nah, Zephyr replied, a wry grin tugging at his lips. We'll stick to the classics, like not dying horribly. The zoo, or what was left of it, was now a sanctuary, a monument to their insanity. Dragons, unicorns, and titans roamed freely. A zoo turned utopia, or as close as you could get when your neighbors were mythical beasts with mood swings that could flatten a city block. Their victory had transformed the place from a cosmic prison into a resting place for human imagination, with creatures once confined to the pages of fantasy now gallivanting across reality. Who would have thought? Kellen mused, his eyes following a dragon's lazy glide across the sky. All those stories about knights and dragons, and here we are turning the tables. Yeah, well, don't expect a fairy tale ending, Janie retorted, her fingers still dancing over the console. I mean, it's us, Zephyr chuckled. Fairy tales are just horror stories with a PR team. But damn if it isn't beautiful in its own twisted way. The shuttle's comms crackled to life, a familiar voice slithering through like an unwanted cold breeze. Vordek, the telepathic pest who never got the memo to shove off. Humans, you have merely postponed the inevitable. Kellen rolled his eyes. Careful, Vordek, you're starting to sound like my mother. Your resilience is admirable but futile, Vordek continued, his voice tinged with that special brand of condescending doom. Yeah, Zephyr interrupted, cutting off the transmission with the casual brutality of a guillotine. Save it for your memoirs, Janie shook her head. You know, if we didn't have to deal with homicidal aliens every other Tuesday, we might get bored. You say that like it's a bad thing, Kellen quipped. Zephyr turned his attention back to the controls, the stars stretching out before them as a promise and a threat. All right, sentimental musings aside, we need a plan. Preferably one that doesn't end with us as cosmic roadkill, Kellen shrugged. How about we don't piss off any more galactic empires for a start? Great idea, Janie said. Next you'll suggest we open a bakery. Zephyr considered it, the ghost of a smile playing on his lips. We could call it pie in the sky. I hear space dragons are fond of pastries. As the laughter subsided, a rare moment of calm settled over the crew. The universe waited outside, an infinite void filled with dangers that made weaponized unicorns seem like a mild inconvenience. But for now, there was a fragile truce, a momentary peace bought with chaos and impossible odds. The shuttle coasted through the black, Zephyr guiding them towards a cluster of uncharted stars. They weren't exactly on vacation, but at least they weren't being actively hunted. That was progress in a very loose, questionable sense. Janie's voice broke the silence, soft but firm. So, about that record of yours, Zephyr nodded, already anticipating the question. Yeah, it's about time we left something behind. Humanity should know what we've done, good and bad. Keeps the mythos alive. Kellen raised an eyebrow. You mean the mythos where we're the crazy bastards who turned fairy tales into war stories? Exactly, Zephyr said. Future generations need to know that sometimes, just sometimes, throwing logic out the window works. Janie leaned back, thoughtful. Think anyone will believe it? Probably not, Kellen smirked. But that's what makes it a legend. As the shuttle sailed on, Zephyr began recording their tale, his words a mix of fact and fancy. In a universe where survival was a game of chance and madness, their story was one of rare victories and improbable heroes. Once upon a time, Zephyr began, the irony not lost on him. There was a band of misfit humans who took the universe by storm. Kellen burst out laughing. And here I thought you weren't a romantic, Zephyr shrugged. Hey, any port in a storm, right? Janie rolled her eyes but smiled, a warmth in her gaze that hadn't been there in a long time. Let's hope they don't censor the juicy bits. The holographic display flickered, showing sketches of their escapades, a tapestry of insanity woven with equal parts courage and recklessness. It was a record not just of what they'd done, but of what humanity could do when pushed to the brink. Zephyr finished his recording with a flourish. So there you have it, a story of idiots in space who refused to follow the rules. Kellen clapped sarcastically. Bravo. I'm sure the history books will have a field day. Assuming there's anyone left to read them, Janie added, her voice dry but hopeful. The shuttle banked gently, leaving behind the chaos and venturing into the unknown. The stars were a map they didn't know how to read, each point of light a potential adventure or disaster. Zephyr leaned back, a sense of completion settling over him. All right, team. Let's haul ass out of here before something else decides we're dinner. Where to? Kellen asked, his voice bright with mischief. Somewhere quiet. And if that doesn't work, somewhere with strong drinks and weak moral standards, Janie laughed. Sounds like a plan. But let's avoid any more mythical beings for a while. The shuttle's engines hummed, a comforting sound that promised stability however tenuous. They had turned the tide of battle, rewritten the rules, and survived to tell the tale. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't permanent, but it was theirs. In the vast, indifferent cosmos, they had carved out a space for imagination and audacity, a testament to what humans could achieve when they stopped playing by the rules. They were a living legend, an improbable fairy tale that dared to come alive in a universe of cold, hard logic. As they vanished into the starlit void, Zephyr couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging. They were more than just a crew of survivors. They were the dreamers and the doers, the ones who'd taken a chance on the impossible and won. Here's to us, Zephyr said, raising an imaginary glass. To the misfits and the mad, Janie replied, her eyes bright with laughter. To us, Kellen echoed, his grin wide and unrepentant. And with that they disappeared into the stars, ready to face whatever came next. Because in the end they were the stories they told, the legends they lived, and the dreams they dared to dream. And that, in a universe of infinite uncertainties, was the greatest power of all.